Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks a lot to QED for inviting BEUC, the European Consumer Organization, to this debate. Once again, a debate on a very important issue for us. For those of you who don't know BEUC, BEUC is the European Consumer Organization. We represent over 40 national consumer organizations in over 30 European countries, including all 28 member states. Net neutrality, as a lot of stakeholders in the room know, has been a very important issue for us. We've been nagging the policymakers for many years. Already with the discussions in 2009, we were highlighting the fact that the provisions that went into the package were probably not enough. So we were foreseeing, in a way, or fearing that the market would develop towards scenarios where there would be some blocking or there would be some undue throttling and issues like this. So we wanted to see more protections in 2009. So we suspected that it was not enough, which is why we are very much welcome the initiative by the European Commission through Connected Continent to try and find a solution to this issue. I would agree that the question then remains what is net neutrality from our perspective, and I'll get to that in a second. But what I really want to highlight is that Connected Continent is a step in the right direction only if it is properly done. If what we get into Connected Continent does not tackle the issue properly and comes up with some weak, porous rights and principles that then are not enforceable in practice or do not really protect rights for consumers, then we're in a worse scenario than we are today. From our perspective, what we have on the table is nothing less than what is the future of the internet. What do we want? What do we understand the internet to be in the future? So it's, in a way, it's an industrial policy question. I do believe there is an inherent conflict between internet access services and the notion of specialized services because of the reasons that Mr. Colasanti was highlighting, because you may have, since specialized services are a big commercial development for operators, they will have an incentive to invest a lot of money in infrastructure that is dedicated to specialized services. And that, in the medium term, may turn out to be less investment in capacity that is destined to internet access service.
How would they do that? How can they distinguish between the two? And I'll get to a second with the business tickets and the economy tickets, if they're dedicating most of their capacity to business tickets and just what is marketed and offered as no access to the open internet, then it's always being degraded. Then we fear that we may come to the scenario of this dirt road internet we've always been talking about. So I really like the metaphors about the cars and the plane tickets. We're not against the offering of business tickets and economy tickets. We're not against commercial freedom. Of course we're not. But the key thing that both Mr. Colasanti said and Mr. Hochmark said is that with your plane ticket, whether it's business or it's economy or whatever car you buy, you can get anywhere, and that's crucial. So if it's access to the internet, it's the full internet. Operators don't get the right to decide what content you can access to or not through an internet access. And that's crucial for us. Now, there were a few questions that were circulated ahead of the event that I found very interesting, and I'm going to make some remarks based on those questions. The first one was, do we need internet regulation? I really raised my eyebrows when I saw this question because I don't get tired of saying the debate we're having is not about regulating the internet. We're not talking about what are the rules online. We're talking about access to the internet. So from our perspective, if you ask us, so this debate about net neutrality, what are we having? I would agree with what Mr. Malcolm Harbour has been saying in the EP, which is like, let's talk about open access to the internet. Let's stop talking about net neutrality in this very particular case. And there we would agree. So the purpose of what we're trying to do here is not to regulate the internet, but the access to the internet precisely so that the internet can remain free and open and neutral. We will hear a lot from different industry stakeholders saying that, let's talk about also search neutrality and OTTs and how the difference between content providers and telecom providers, and there's very much different regulation that weighs on their shoulders and so on. And that's true, and that's an important issue to tackle, and we should talk about that. But I don't think that's what we're doing right here. If you go into the details of what we're doing in Articles 23 and 24 of the Connected Continent proposal, we're talking about regulating the right to access the open internet and how that interacts with specialized services. So from a consumer perspective, blocking and throttling
has been an issue. I think it is still an issue. Maybe blocking, like you said, the industry has woken up and has stopped doing that. That's very much welcome. Throttling, I cannot tell you whether they're doing it or not, and that's one of the main questions. Shouldn't NRAs have the powers to be able to monitor what is happening over the pipes, to see whether or not, if you're trying to consume video from a certain online platform at a peak time, they will throttle so that they favor their own specialized service, for example, if they're also serving you a digital TV platform. But also a point that Mr. Terrava has raised, and I fully agree, is that this idea, at least this concept of net neutrality, is very important for content creators. Because if we ensure that through an open internet access, consumers can access all content, then innovators know that they can create a new service or application and easily reach the entire network. That's what the internet revolution has been about. People can innovate and know they can reach millions and millions of content consumers at once. And a third very important point, I think, from a legal perspective, is that operators, content providers, and also consumers have the legal certainty of what can be done and what cannot be done with internet access services. And that's why also we think that this is a good initiative and should be put into European law. The second question I saw was, who should pay for heavy internet traffic? And if we're honest, I think that's one of the main questions that underpins this debate. Reports I've read from the French regulator, for example, ARCEP, or some data from the OECD, suggest that there is no congestion in the transit layers of the internet, in the backhaul, like you were saying. That the market is competitive and that economies of scale are achieved. It's easy to deploy more bandwidth. Now, I'm not an engineer, but if this data is true, then the congestions we're talking about, or that are being sometimes denounced, are in the lower layers within the operators and networks. So that's why for us it's a question of where are we putting also, where are operators incentivized to put the investment into products that they are going to manage through their own closed networks, so to speak, through specialized services, or guaranteeing access to the open internet and deliver their video, for example, if they are also delivering video over the internet access. Another question was, is net neutrality necessary to ensure technology development? Well, of course. I mean, in this perspective, without these guarantees that, of access to the open internet, telecom companies could become the gatekeepers and start deciding the rules of the game. Why should they be able to choose what content succeeds or does not succeed on the internet? What player succeeds or does not succeed? And this, in the US, there's a lot of developments, and I'm sure we'll talk about what's happening in the US today, precisely on these issues as well.